Hey there, for those who are watching. It's probably just you, Dr. Simone, but I wanted to give a heads up that my discussion this week is really lengthy. And the reason it's so lengthy is because I didn't really know much about this topic. And so I did a lot of research and felt that the things I included in my post were very vital to talk about because they're very vital to the subject. So, yeah, just a heads up. Thanks if you get through the whole thing. And I'm just going to go ahead and start reading now. Stereotyping. McLeod defines stereotype as a fixed genderized belief about a particular group or class of people. Though positive stereotypes exist, negative stereotypes are more common. Regardless of whether stereotypes are correct in some cases, they are considered wrong and hurtful. Buckley describes stereotypes as problematic and terrible because no two individuals are the same. Buckley believes that labeling a group of people who are assumed to share one characteristic in particular is basically to dehumanize them based on one aspect of their personalities. On the other hand, Peterson explains that a stereotype is simply a generalization about how a group of people behaves, and elucidates that when stereotypes may be statistically accurate, they are not universally valid. Peterson believes that we should think about stereotypes in two ways. One, it's naive to say you can't use a generalization about a class of people unless it's universally valid. We use such stereotypes all the time and would be paralyzed without them. And two, working out ways in which the use of a stereotype can go wrong is important, as is determining when some alternative is appropriate. Peterson continues to say that many generalizations, such as those based on race, gender, or religion, are subject to special scrutiny, rightfully so, due to their historical misuse, but that it would be an error to say that use of stereotype is wrong just because there exists exceptions to generalizations upon which it is based. I want to clarify that I say all of this not because I am trying to justify stereotyping, and not to say that it is okay, but to say that everyone is different and we notice differences whether we like it or not. We know that ignoring the increase of diversity or pretending that differences do not exist is ineffective, does not help create and foster culturally inclusive classrooms. Stereotypes exist and probably will never cease to exist. Therefore, I feel that it is ineffective to teach children that stereotypes are never accurate. They exist, and children need to be taught how to identify and address them in an appropriate and respectful manner. I think in order to do so, it is important for educators to understand and help students understand: one, what stereotypes are; two, that they might be statistically accurate but are not universally accurate; three, the threat they pose in and out of the classroom; and four, how they make people feel. They are hurtful, problematic, and cause threat. What are some of the stereotypical comments you have heard in the classroom or in your life that you would like to have a better understanding of or would like to refute? There are 5 common stereotypes. 1. Racial profiling. Blacks are good at sports. 2. Gender profiling. Girls are not as good in math as boys. 3. Cultures. All Mexicans are lazy and come into America legally. 4. Groups of individuals. All blondes are unintelligent. And 5. Sexual. Any feminine man is gay and any masculine woman is a lesbian. How do you explain the concept of stereotyping to students? The answer to this question is dependent on the age of the children. There is a different appropriateness based on development for how to speak to children about various topics, including stereotyping. Though the exact wording will look different for varying ages, there are a few things we can do across almost any age to help children understand the concept of stereotyping. 1. Talk with children about stereotypes that emerge from conversation, including those on television and the news. 2. Openly and positively discuss race, religion, and culture similarities and differences. And 3. Consider and reflect on our own stereotypes and biases of people whose race and ethnicity differs from our own. Stereotype Threat. In this week's reading, Noma explains that stereotype threat is a theory developed by psychologists to describe the anxiety students experience when confronted with situations in which they fear confirming negative stereotypes about their social groups, especially members of groups believed to be academically inferior. In other words, students worry they will be judged on the basis of a stereotype rather than on their own merits. Stereotype threats can impact students in many ways. NOMA informs us that stereotype threats can result in low testing performance and academic achievement, but they can also affect executive functions and the learning process. In Stereotype Threat, What Are the Impacts? The author explains that stereotype threats can cause executive functions to be impaired by the increasing amount of stress students experience in the class, and that for those under stereotype threat, emotional response to mistakes not only leads them to withdraw effort and engagement in the learning process, but also makes efforts of responding to emotions less effective. Further, learning outcomes are also affected by stereotype threats because they disrupt the ability to effectively access and use knowledge while also disrupting the ability to build that knowledge. Since stereotype threats have such an enormous impact on students' chances at success, it is vital for teachers to understand how to properly and appropriately identify and address stereotypes in the classroom to mitigate the threats. Helping students authentically accept differences. Students enter into the classroom with beliefs, attitudes, abilities, knowledge, and skills that they acquire within their home prior to entering school. This includes beliefs and attitudes regarding race, culture, gender, and sexual orientation. Rhodes is in agreement when stating, by the time children start elementary school, gender and race shape their lives in many ways that parents might want to prevent. By the time children enter preschool, they are aware of racial differences, and by the age 12, children develop an image of most racial/ethnic groups in America. Young children develop a variety of stereotypes through surprisingly subtle features of language, contributing towards a child's tendencies to view the world through the lens of social stereotypes. Additionally, Rhodes mentions that stereotypes do not only affect children's beliefs, they can also shape a child's behavior. In addition to beliefs and attitudes regarding race, culture, gender, and sexual orientation, children also enter the classroom with various beliefs and attitudes on authenticity. Teaching children to be authentic involves learning respect and empathy, and these aspects of authenticity should begin being practiced in children's early years. When children are not given proper and appropriate care by their adults, they will struggle with being empathetic, respectful, and therefore authentic. For 7 years, I worked as an in-home childcare provider. I have observed various adults and their childcare practices. The majority of adults tend to force their children to share something they are playing with and force their children to say sorry when they have done something inappropriate. These common practices, along with others, hinder a child's ability to learn genuine empathy, respect, and authenticity. Sharing. Cedar informs readers that toddlers have not yet developed empathy and cannot see things from another child's perspective. Therefore, forcing a child to share does not teach the social skills that we want toddlers to learn. Instead, it may send many messages we don't want to send and may actually increase how often our toddlers throw a tantrum. Cedar explains that by forcing children to share instead of speak up for themselves, send the message that 1. Crying loudly will help a child get what they want. 2. Adults are in charge of who gets what and when they get it. And 3. Children should always interrupt what they are working on to give something to another child just because the other child asks. Through forcing a child to share, the adult is unintentionally robbing a child the opportunity to learn empathy, self-advocacy, and self-regulation. When a child is given the proper tools to handle situations such as sharing, the end result is a child who learns patience and empathy, and one who will be able to handle more emotionally complex situations as they grow older. Apologizing. When young children are forced to apologize, they learn to use perfunctory sorries that children continue to use into adulthood. These types of forced apologies, especially when uttered begrudgingly, do not properly and appropriately address situations or behaviors. Bailey explains that forcing unremorseful kids to apologize to others before they are truly sorry may do more harm than good. This is because the main point of an apology, to express remorse and repair relationships, is lost because children may dislike the apologizer even more after the insincere apology than before. Children know when you mean you're truly sorry. Further, when children are coerced into apologizing, the teachable element of having the child apologize has gone away, and the goal of the apology prompt to help your children express remorse, soothe someone else's hurt feelings, and make your child more likable is lost. Empathy. Levy, Goldstein, and Feldman define empathy as the capacity to resonate with and reflect upon the feelings and mental states of others. And they describe empathy as being a core social ability by a long history of mammalian evolution to enhance species survival, afford group communication, and enable social life. The development of empathy in children's early years is vital because morality depends on it. In order for children to be able to treat others as they want to be treated, they have to be able to recognize and understand how others feel. While children are not born with empathy, they are born with the capacity for it. Empathy does not develop simply based on the way our brains are wired. It only develops under certain conditions. In nurturing empathy, the authors explain that very young children need to experience empathy to develop the ability to be empathetic with others. Empathy is developed out of young children's earliest relationships with parents and primary and caregivers who recognize, understand, and respond to their needs and feelings. Therefore, parents and other primary caregivers play a critical role in developing children's empathy. Sladengren shares that when children have not experienced adequate empathy growing up, they display behaviors towards others that reflect a lack of empathy, which often leads to serious problems. Additionally, children who lack empathy tend to behave more aggressively towards others, which may be related to an inability to perceive and accurately interpret feelings and behaviors of others and of self. Respect. In All About Respect, the authors define respect as accepting somebody for who they are, even when they're different from you or you don't agree with them. Kids Helpline explains that respect is the glue that holds your relationship together. Being respected by important people in our lives growing up teaches us how to be respectful towards others. Additionally, when respect is present in our relationships, trust, safety, and well-being are built and supported. Kids are not born with respect, just as with empathy. It is something that needs to be taught and learned. Children do not learn to be respectful in a genuine manner when they are not properly modeled or taught respect in their early years. Leo confirms this when informing readers that we can teach respect only by modeling treating each other with respect, and by giving children the same respect we expect. Unfortunately, it is common for adults to try teaching children respect through means and use of disrespect. Further, in regards to respect, Leo states that children learn respect or disrespect from how we treat them and how we treat each other. When children live with disrespect, they learn disrespect. It is also vital for children to be modeled self-respect because it is also important to have respect for yourself. What ways can you encourage young people to be authentic in their acceptance of people different from themselves? Empathy and respect are vital aspects of being authentic in accepting differences. Based on childcare interactions with their adults in home, children may enter the classroom lacking empathy and respect, having the wrong idea of what respect is. I believe that in order for young people to authentically accept people different from them, they must learn how to genuinely respect themselves and others. A few ways I could encourage young people to authentically accept people different from them is to 1. Model, promote, and encourage respect and empathy, positive discipline, providing warmth and structure, and creating and maintaining an effective environment for student learning. 2. Create and maintain a culturally responsive classroom. And 3. Identify and address generalizations and stereotypes in a proper and appropriate manner. I created a table here to answer the last question, and this chart lists the activities I found most appealing. I found these most appealing because of the type of activity, and I listed them here. All right, I'm sorry about the lengthy post this week. If you were able to get through it, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in discussions.